Disabilities Issues and Updates on BCTV is supported by the Berks County Center for Independent Living, Abilities in Motion.
Hello, and welcome to Disability Issues and Updates. I am Teresa Faulkner, your host. I am the Consumer Community Outreach Coordinator here at Abilities in Motion. We want to remind our viewers that our office is still not open to the public. However, we are open for business. So if you have any questions or concerns or anything that you would like to discuss with us, please give us a call at 610-376-0010. Press O for the operator. And if you'd like to speak directly to me, it's that same number. My direct extension is 108. We want to remind our viewers, please save the date on your calendars, July the 26th through July the 31st. Abilities in Motion will be having their annual art show, which will take place at the Goggle Works in Reading, Pennsylvania. If you are interested in participating in that, the deadline for your artwork and for you to register is June the 30th. Please make sure if you have questions or concerns, you give us a call and we can direct you to the proper persons that you need to speak to concerning our art show. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. It's a beautiful day, and we have a beautiful guest with us today. Her name is Jenny Angel, and she is the project manager, Accessibility Excellence, PA Museum. Good morning, Jenny. How are you?
Good morning, Teresa. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you so much for being a part of our show today. And tell us a little bit about yourself. Why don't we talk about you a little bit?
Sure. So I am based in Harrisburg, and I've been working in this position since January of 2020. I actually moved here from Detroit, Michigan, but I'm really loving living in Pennsylvania and being able to work on this amazing project and partner with Centers for Independent Living in particular. I come from a museum background. I used to work at the Detroit Institute of Arts, and part of the great part about this project is really partnering museums and helping museums improve their accessibility and working with CILS to help do that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Accessibility is, and it sometimes can be problematic for our viewers. And so we're just excited to have you. We enjoy the fact that you have a museum background. And why don't we proceed with our presentation today? Our topic is accessibility.
Sure thing. All right. So is that slide live for everyone?
It is.
Perfect. So today I'm going to be sharing a little bit about this Accessibility Excellence project. This is a partnership between PA Museums, which is the organization I work for. It's the statewide museum association, kind of like a professional organization, but for museums and historic sites. And we're partnering with the State Bureau of Historic Sites and Museums. So what you're seeing on the photographs around the rim of this slide with the map of Pennsylvania in the center are some of the 20 sites and museums that are owned and operated by the Bureau. Everything from Flagship Niagara and the Erie Maritime Museum up in the upper left to Pennsylvania Railroad Museum, Pennsbury Manor, and particularly to where you are, the Daniel Boone Homestead and the Conrad Weiser Homestead, which are both located and served by your CIL. So I'm going to talk a little bit today just to give you an overview of the project and then talk about those two sites and what we discovered on their site visits earlier this year.
Jenny, I just wanted to add, when we're dealing with accessibility, persons with disabilities sometimes have difficulty getting into these places. Is this the topic that we're going to be discussing and how you're going to be working through that? Just kind of make our viewers understand more what it looks like or what we're talking about.
Definitely. So the goal of this particular project, and actually I'll put this up in the next slide, is to work on a toolkit that's going to help museum folks better understand the accessibility needs for people with disabilities. So really to bridge that gap, to help museum people understand how they can find out where their organization is, find their baseline, so to speak. And also working towards national standards. So we're recognizing that a lot of organizations are really setting that bar for accessibility. And some organizations might be just starting out that journey. And so we're really kind of showing that full spectrum. What does it look like when you're just starting out? What does it look like when you're reaching what we call the better standards for accessibility? What does that look like? And so the idea is that this toolkit can help museums understand what that means. And those higher tier standards, two parts of that are working directly with folks with disabilities in the planning process and partnerships. So this is kind of a tool for museums to understand how this works and what the best practices are. And we're always, as the project team particularly, trying to keep our ear open to what the needs are of the community that we're aiming to serve. Like the project is designed to be used by folks working in museums, but the end goal is to better serve people with disabilities.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And so part of what we were really working towards with this and starting out was thinking of, okay, what does accessibility mean for us in the project? There are a whole ton of different definitions floating around out there. And particularly, there are even some that have been crafted by the National Museum or National Historic Site organizations. And we looked at those and we're kind of like, there's some gaps there that we can kind of help fill in, and particularly around the needs of people with disabilities. It was a lot of what a museum should look like, but not necessarily about how the needs of folks with disabilities can tie into that.
Okay.
So for this definition, we're really focusing on kind of a two-pronged approach. So for the purposes of this project, we're saying that an accessible museum or historic site is one that welcomes people with all types of disabilities and also provides what is needed for people across the continuum of human ability to have full participation in its spaces, exhibitions, and programs. So thinking about this idea of not only providing what's necessary for an equivalent experience, but also being seen as a welcoming place and not letting those barriers kind of get in your way or getting held up behind what the museum perceives as barriers, what the audience perceives as barriers, really trying to open this up and open up the conversation for everyone.
So it's really addressing barriers. It's really addressing barriers, things that persons with disabilities kind of experience when they go into different places. Well, first of all, just to get in the door and then to be able to maneuver while they're in these particular places.
And something that's really come up too is particularly with COVID, this giant leap forward in digital programming and things that are digital only. We really wanted to help museums and to highlight, if you're doing something that's a Zoom program or that's a virtual field trip for students, for example, how do you make sure that those are accessible as well? Just because you're doing something new doesn't mean you can't include people with disabilities and realize that that's part of your audience for that program.
Absolutely.
So it's been a lot of learning on our feet, but it's been really great.
Good.
And so one of the things that we're working on in the early stages of this project is really how do we get voices of people with disabilities in at every stage. We do have an accessibility advisory council that we're working with on the project. This is a group of folks from across the country, either with disabilities or that work with people with disabilities professionally, so still staff. And that sort of thing. But we also wanted to kind of do our research in the community as much as possible. And this quote here comes from Shannon Finnegan, who is an artist with a disability. And this is actually from the Disability Visibility podcast, Alice Wong's podcast, which highly recommended.
Okay.
And this was their issue on accessibility. And she says that I think this is because the way that people treat accessibility is often the way that they treat disabled people. And so when they treat access as a burden, they're treating disabled people as a burden. And when they treat access as a source of joy and beauty, then they start to understand the joy and beauty that's in our communities. And
Absolutely.
that just spoke to my heart.
Yes, yes.
This needs to be our touchstone for where we're going with this project. And it doesn't need to be just like, okay, what do museums need to do, but how do we really understand our communities and how do we really engage and work with them moving forward? So just to kind of give you a quick guideline of where we're at on this project right now.
Okay.
Right smack dab in the middle, basically. This is a 2-year Institute of Museum and Library Services funded grant. So we've already done, I've talked a lot about this research. We've already done a lot of that research in the first phase, the exploratory part. And we are right in the middle of phase 2 right now. This started in October of 2020 and is projected to extend through July of this year. It might go a little bit longer.
Okay.
This is where we're really going out into those 20 sites and museums that I talked about earlier and testing this toolkit. And we're doing this in partnership with regional SILs. So for each site that we go to, we're working with the staff on that site. And then we're also bringing in consumers and staff members from the regional SIL that serves that organization to come in, take a look at the site, go through it as a typical visitor would with our toolkit in hand to help assess where the site is at. And then afterwards, we just wrap up with a debrief conversation. So what was your experience like? What was your favorite part of the experience?
Okay.
What are some ways that you see that we could improve accessibility? What are the most important things? If you had to prioritize, what's one thing that you would say this needs to be done first? This is a major barrier. And also, where did you see opportunities? What's the site doing well that they could kind of capitalize on and market to say, you know, hey, we're working to serve people with disabilities. Here's how.
Yes, we actually had 2 of our staff members take part from our Center for Independent Living. How was that experience?
Yeah, let me forward on to those pictures. Or actually, I'll just kind of start off with the format. So we partner with the regional SILs, and this is kind of coordinated by the Center of Independent Living of Central Pennsylvania that serves the Harrisburg area. They're kind of our hub, so to speak. And as I mentioned before, we're really looking to kind of combine this. What does staff see as their barriers, and what do people with disabilities experience as part of their visit to the site? Okay. And so I've got two photographs here. This is from Daniel Boone Homestead in Birdsboro, and this was, as you can see, a very kind of rainy day. But sites are open, rain or shine. So we're gonna go and do this if everybody's up for it, and we're really great. But you can see here some of the things that we were experiencing. So in the dark green jacket here, you can see Shelley Hauser, who is a hip and knee congenital amputee. And we were talking about this ramp that had recently been constructed. The site is very, very hilly. I don't know if any of you have ever been there.
I have.
But the grade was a major issue that we were talking about a lot, in the pathways. So this is a site that's, I forget how many, but in the hundreds of acres. It's very, very large and used a lot by folks for recreation. So going in the trails, taking walks, picnicking on the site. And that was a large part of what we were going through, and how to make sure that despite these hills, that it's still as accessible as possible for folks. And this particular pathway, it was something that had been recently constructed. Staff were like, yeah, we're pretty certain it's ADA compliant. And going through the site visit, we're actually like, you know what, in this rain, it's very challenging to traverse. It had some, and you can't really see that well in pictures, but it was kind of like pebbles embedded in the concrete, which could get very slippery in the rain. So even though it was an accessible grade, Shelley and I think Matt, who were there.
Matt
Yeah.
Lawson.
Were giving us some really good feedback as to how that we could kind of improve this, or, just put some signage and say, ramp might be slippery with wet. We also noticed that lip that we had there going on from the concrete path to the gravel path. That was something that the maintenance staff were like, okay, we can deal with that right away, of evening out so there's not so much of a drop between the concrete and the stone pathway.
Go ahead, Jenny. You were saying where they had noticed that could be problematic as far as that drop from the ramp down onto the ground.
Yeah, so this was something that the maintenance staff really were discussing about, and we're working very soon, I think, after the site visit, to fill that in, so that would not be such a drop, and that was really a quite easy fix that could be taken care of pretty quickly, and an accessibility barrier that could be removed fairly easily by the site staff.
On the other picture, I see that you're actually inside the building. Did you talk about any things that needed to be addressed while you were in the building?
Yeah, so in this picture, you can see Shelly in there, and she's having a conversation with a person in a black jacket and jeans, and that is Heather Hicks, who is the site manager of the Boone Homestead. And for part of the experience, we were getting a tour of the site led by Heather. And one of the great things that Shelly was able to help us with was thinking not only of her personal experience with disability, but of working with folks with a wide range of disabilities, the things that may be barriers for folks who are blind, or for folks who are hard of hearing or deaf as well. And particularly talking about the way that the tour was given, how to integrate more description, how to use more particular specific wayfinding techniques. So instead of saying, over there, to your right about 20 feet. And also thinking about opportunities for tactile engagement, or for better lighting to help folks who might be lip reading.
So when you were talking, it's yes about accessibility, but it's also about engagement for the person with the disability. Very good point. Very good point.
Exactly. We're really working to make sure that that there's equity in that engagement, that the experiences can include engagement from everybody, and also that really, I think the biggest learning point for all of the sites has been how to bring people with disabilities to the table from the start.
Okay.
And I'm going to kind of shift here to the second site, which is the Conrad Weiser Homestead.
Okay.
And something that could have been an issue that would have been addressed from the start if people with disabilities were at the table, which is the photograph to the left here that you can see of Matt, who uses a mechanized wheelchair. And this doorway and a little lift up to where an exhibit was with a plexiglass barrier. It was at about a 45-degree angle from the doorway entrance.
Oh, okay.
And he discovered that the doorway seemed wide enough. We thought it was great, but it was that turning radius, and particularly the issue that there wasn't really any leeway within the plexi barrier. The turning radius was doable, but it was very, very tight for him in his chair. So, and that was something that staff were like, oh yeah, we worked with a lot of folks, we thought this was a great exhibit, and then we realized, whoops, this is a barrier here. And so that's something that we, in the debrief, are discussing some options. Is it removing the plexi barrier that could help out? Is it, bumping that little lip back, changing the angle? What are some ways that we could still have the exhibition space there, but make it a more accessible space physically for folks coming in?
And I do think with persons that are in motorized wheelchairs, that could really be a problem, because it could cause the actual chair to tip. It could cause some serious problems. So yes. Wonderful.
Exactly. So, but kind of on the plus side, he was really grateful that the fact that a lot of things were at a lower level. So the labels were lower than a traditional, usually 5 feet up is kind of the standard. So he was really grateful that everything was readable at that level, the way that the site had designed it. So kind of pluses and minuses.
Sure.
And kind of again from the same site, you can see on the right-hand side, we were going up to some outdoor interpretation, a statue on the site that was being on our tour led by one of their volunteers. And this was a new pathway that had been put in, but up a very steep hill. And I was actually in a manual chair that day, and I was getting a workout.
Really?
Going up that hill, and actually parts of it we kind of had the choo-choo train. Matt was pushing me up in his mechanized chair because I was tapped out. And so that was just kind of but we were all able to get up that hill and kind of talk about, this is something that it's part of the site's geography. It would be challenging to change, but how can we, and they're actually working on a master plan. How can we integrate that in to make these paths a little at an easier grade? So you don't have to haul up that hill to get to what's really a pretty essential part of that site in the sculpture, talking about some of the Native American partners that Conrad Weiser was working with.
So am I able to assume that at the end of that visit, you were pretty tired?
I was tired. My arms were burning. But it was really great having that opportunity to get that in and really see as many different perspectives as possible as part of that visit. That's something else that we're really trying to do. I mean, the site visits, we're only able to get between 2 and 4 people at each visit, those individual perspectives. But we're really thinking about how can we get a broader outreach. And part of that is through the partnerships with the SILs. So the idea that the site visit is just the start of a conversation.
Sure.
And that there will be continued conversation between the site and the SILs, maybe getting different staff involved, getting different consumers involved, moving forward. And
yes. Wonderful.
So what I wanted to kind of share as we wrap up for the day is the ways that you all as viewers can get involved. And so this is the link that I've got up on the screen, pamuseums.org/accessibility-excellence. That is our kind of landing page for the toolkit right now. And so if there is anyone in the audience that knows of a museum in their area that you think could benefit from using this toolkit, we've got a sign-up sheet here for folks to sign up to receive the toolkit when it is complete. Right now, that's targeted to be around the winter or possibly the early part of the year in 2022. And so if you go on that website, you can register to get the toolkit, and that can either be for you as a member of the community or to send to the staff or the volunteers at your local museum or historic site to kind of help them use. And ideally, you'd both be using it and
right
on your own side. And then finally, I just wanted to put up my personal contact information. So if you have any questions or want to know more about the project that I haven't talked about today, I recognize this was kind of the whirlwind tour. I'd be happy to talk about things some more. So that's just my name and my contact information, which my email is c-jangell, like angel with 2 L's, @pa.gov. And I'll give that to Teresa as well, so she can feel free to share out as part of the presentation.
Jenny, thank you so much for being a part of our show today and sharing all the information concerning accessibility. We wish you and the grant and all those that are involved, the SILs, the very best as you all work together to make accessibility better for all persons. Thank you so much for being in our show. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye now.
Disabilities Issues and Updates on BCTV is supported by the Berks County Center for Independent Living, Abilities in Motion.